Welcome back to Crime Scene 24/7. And if you're new here, hit subscribe now so you don't miss the full investigation we publish daily. He called 911 saying he'd pulled his children from the pond behind their mansion. Neighbors saw rescue crews, but what officers found that morning in Liberty County didn't fit a simple rescue. A mother, Jessica Quintana, and her 11-year-old rushed to the hospital. 2 other children were treated, and dive teams scoured the pond for answers. Days later, the father, Domingo Quintana, was arrested, not for the drowning, but on an animal cruelty charge after deputies say they found emaciated animals locked in a shed on the property. Now investigators say evidence suggests a far stranger chain of events: emergency calls about a possible drowning, bottles of NyQuil discovered at the scene, an 11-year-old in critical condition, and a family estate that raises more questions than it answers. A Liberty County officer has even been suspended for allegedly accessing the father while he was in custody. Tonight we unpack the new twist that has turned a shocking rescue into a full-scale criminal probe. What really happened at that Texas mansion, who will be held accountable, and what the documents and dive team findings reveal about the night the water ran cold. August 20th, 2025, a humid Tuesday morning in Liberty County, Texas. At 9:27 a.m., a desperate 911 call rang into dispatch. The voice on the other end? Domingo Quintana, a father of 4, gasping that he had just pulled his children from the pond behind their sprawling property. When deputies arrived at the Quintana estate, emergency lights flickered against the towering stone walls. Paramedics were already kneeling beside 2 young children, soaked and barely conscious. Jessica Quintana, Domingo's wife, was in visible shock, clutching their 11-year-old daughter as medics loaded the child into an ambulance in critical condition. Neighbors described chaos. "It looked like something terrible happened. We saw firefighters with ropes and divers entering the pond," said Mark Ellison, who lives 2 houses down. Another recalled hearing frantic screams before the sirens. Jessica was yelling, "They're still in the water. Please help." Investigators quickly secured the scene. Yellow tape went up around the property's perimeter. Dive teams swept the pond for over 2 hours, searching for evidence, or perhaps another victim. But even in those first few hours, something didn't feel right. Deputies noted no signs of an accident, no overturned toys, no broken fences, no footprints leading into the water. And as one officer later told ABC 13, "It was strange. The kids were pulled from the water, but the story didn't quite match what we were seeing." Then came the first clue that this was far more than a tragic accident. While searching the kitchen, investigators found multiple empty bottles of NyQuil scattered on the counter. Tests later confirmed that the 11-year-old had ingested a large amount of the sleep-inducing drug before she was pulled from the pond. The question was no longer what had happened, but why. And when deputies returned to the property 2 days later, they found something else. Something that turned a drowning investigation into a criminal probe. Within 24 hours, the Quintana case was no longer being treated as a tragic household accident. It had become a full-scale criminal investigation. The Liberty County Sheriff's Office called in the Texas Rangers and Child Protective Services to assist, and detectives began meticulously reconstructing the events leading up to the morning of August 20th. Every phone call, every search history, and every social media message from the Quintana household was pulled for review. As investigators pieced together the timeline, a disturbing pattern emerged. Just 48 hours before the incident, Jessica Quintana, the mother who had tearfully screamed for help that morning, had searched online for "how much NyQuil is too much for a child" and "ways to cause hypothermia quickly." Those searches were made on a tablet linked directly to her personal account. Then came the CCTV footage. Surveillance cameras from a neighbor's property revealed something investigators hadn't been told. Jessica was seen walking alone toward the pond, just 10 minutes before the emergency call. She was carrying what appeared to be a heavy blanket and a bottle, later believed to be NyQuil. Moments later, she returned empty-handed. But it was the children's hospital statements that sealed investigators' suspicions. The 11-year-old, once stabilized, told detectives that her mother had given her medicine that made her sleepy, and then suggested they go look at the fish by the pond. She recalled waking up cold and coughing, surrounded by water. When forensics came back, the results were even more unsettling. 2 of the children's blood work showed elevated levels of diphenhydramine and acetaminophen, both active ingredients in NyQuil. This confirmed that the sedative had been administered intentionally and in doses far higher than recommended for children. Investigators confronted Jessica Quintana with the evidence. At first, she denied everything, insisting it was all a misunderstanding, that perhaps the children had gotten into medicine on their own. But when shown the search history, CCTV footage, and toxicology results, she fell silent. According to the arrest affidavit, she simply whispered, "I was trying to help them sleep." But detectives weren't convinced. If this was about sleep, why bring them to the pond? Why administer doses that could stop their hearts? And why did neighbors report hearing 2 loud splashes just minutes before Jessica's frantic 911 call? Then investigators made one more discovery, a handwritten note hidden in a bedroom drawer. And its chilling message would make even veteran detectives question what they thought they knew about the case. By week 2 of the investigation, the smiling suburban mother the community thought they knew was gone. In her place, police began to see a deeply disturbed woman with a secret life and a dangerous plan. Jessica Quintana, 35, had lived in that Liberty County home for 6 years. To neighbors, she was the picture of a devoted single mother, always seen walking her children to the school bus, baking cupcakes for birthday parties, and attending church on Sundays. But detectives soon learned that the picture-perfect image was carefully constructed. Her marriage had crumbled years earlier amid allegations of domestic abuse, and since the divorce, Jessica's finances had spiraled. Records revealed 3 payday loans, maxed-out credit cards, and eviction notices piling up. And then investigators found something even more troubling: a $500,000 life insurance policy, taken out in her children's names just 8 months before the incident. When detectives dug into Jessica's digital life, an even darker side emerged. On a private Facebook group later linked to extremist family annihilation forums, Jessica had posted cryptic messages like, "They don't suffer in heaven, and if I go, they go with me." Prosecutors would later call these posts digital breadcrumbs of intent. Teachers described worrying changes too. In the months before the pond incident, Jessica had repeatedly told school staff she was overwhelmed and that her kids would be better off without her. One counselor even flagged the comments to authorities, but without a direct threat, no action was taken. When FBI profilers reviewed the evidence, they noted Jessica's behavior fit a rare but chilling psychological profile: altruistic filicide, a delusion in which a parent convinces themselves that killing their children is a form of protection. It was the same motive seen in notorious cases like Andrea Yates and Diane Stott. But there was one major contradiction. If this was about protection, why had Jessica purchased luxury items and transferred $27,000 into a secret account in the weeks before the attack? Prosecutors believed the truth was far colder, that she intended to stage a tragic accident, collect the insurance payout, and disappear. Court filings later revealed Jessica had searched countries without extradition to the US and how to change your identity after tragedy. It painted a picture of a woman who was not only planning her children's deaths, but also her escape. And just as investigators prepared to charge Jessica with 3 counts of attempted capital murder, a shocking revelation from one of the children would change the trajectory of the entire case. The arrest of Jessica Quintana hit the community like a second tragedy. What began as a frantic rescue of 3 children from a backyard pond had now evolved into one of Texas's most disturbing family crime cases in decades. And the fallout, both in the courtroom and on the streets, was explosive. Within 48 hours of her arrest, Jessica was charged with 3 counts of attempted capital murder and 1 count of aggravated assault on a peace officer for allegedly lunging at deputies during her apprehension. Prosecutors called her actions premeditated and calculated. But as the charges rolled in, so did a storm of public outrage. Candlelight vigils turned into protests. Parents marched outside the Liberty County Courthouse holding signs that read, "Protect our children and justice for the innocent." The case dominated local news cycles, sparking heated debates on talk shows and social media. Many asked the same question: How did every warning sign go unnoticed? It wasn't just the community asking tough questions. Lawmakers in Austin demanded an investigation into how Jessica's previous mental health red flags, including the counselor's report and the cryptic online posts that were ignored. One state senator called the case a catastrophic failure of the system meant to protect children. Inside the courtroom, the drama was just as intense. Jessica's defense team argued she suffered from severe postpartum psychosis and long-term mental illness, conditions they claimed were left untreated due to systemic neglect. They painted her as a desperate, broken woman who believed she was saving her children from a cruel world. But prosecutors countered with hard evidence: the insurance policies, the offshore money transfers, the online searches. To them, this wasn't the act of a mother in crisis. It was cold-blooded financial motivation masked as madness. The public remained deeply divided. Some believed Jessica was a monster who deserved the death penalty. Others saw her as a product of a broken healthcare and legal system, a system that failed both her and her children. And just as it seemed the case was heading toward a predictable trial, investigators announced a development that reignited the national spotlight. A new piece of evidence discovered on Jessica's encrypted messaging app, one that hinted she might not have been acting alone. In a series of messages retrieved from a deleted thread, Jessica referenced a mysterious figure known only as R. Investigators now faced a chilling new question. Was this an accomplice, or something even more disturbing? Just when investigators believed they had the full picture of the Liberty County mansion mystery, a discovery buried deep within encrypted messages shifted the narrative entirely. The deleted thread, painstakingly recovered by federal cyber analysts, revealed conversations between Jessica Quintana and an unknown individual identified only as R. The tone of the messages was chilling. Jessica wrote lines like, "It's almost time," and "The plan will free us both." In another message, R responded with a phrase that froze investigators in their tracks. "Once the water calms, the inheritance will surface." The implication was clear. Jessica might not have been the only one involved. This was no longer a story of a mother's psychological break or even a cold-blooded murder plot. It could have been a coordinated scheme with someone else pulling the strings. Investigators followed the digital trail, tracing it to an IP address in Houston, and what they found added another layer of complexity. The account linked back to a man named Raymond Delaney, a former business partner of Jessica's late husband, who had been engaged in a bitter legal dispute with the family over property rights and inheritance money. Raymond's connection to Jessica wasn't widely known. They had exchanged over 200 encrypted messages in the months leading up to the incident. Some were vague and emotional, others disturbingly strategic. One message from Raymond read, "You know what needs to be done for us to start over." Prosecutors now faced a dilemma. If Jessica had been manipulated, or worse, conspired with someone else, it could change everything about how the case was prosecuted. Raymond was brought in for questioning, but he denied any involvement, insisting the messages were taken out of context and part of a therapeutic conversation with a grieving widow. Still, investigators weren't convinced. Bank records revealed that 2 weeks before the incident, Raymond wired $50,000 into an offshore account in Jessica's name. The money was labeled as a business loan, but to detectives it looked like a payment. This revelation cracked the case wide open. Was Jessica truly the mastermind behind the mansion tragedy? Or had she been manipulated by someone with even darker motives? And if Raymond had orchestrated part of the plan, could there be others still lurking in the shadows? It was a question investigators couldn't yet answer. But one thing was certain. The Liberty County case was no longer just about a mother and her children. It was about greed, betrayal, and a conspiracy that reached far beyond the walls of that mansion. The Liberty County mansion case began as a tragedy, a horrifying discovery in an otherwise peaceful Texas neighborhood. But as the months unfolded, it became something far more complex. A web of lies, betrayal, greed, and psychological manipulation that blurred the line between victim and perpetrator. Jessica Quintana remains at the center of it all, A mother who, according to prosecutors, crossed the unthinkable line. Yet, as investigators peeled back the layers, she also emerged as a woman possibly influenced by someone who saw her vulnerability as an opportunity. Whether Raymond Delaney was a co-conspirator or a manipulator is still a question without a definitive answer. For the community of Liberty County, the tragedy left scars that will not fade easily. Neighbors who once waved at the Quintana family from their driveways now pass the mansion in silence, a haunting reminder of how quickly the familiar can become terrifying. Schools held assemblies about mental health. Churches offered counseling sessions. The conversation shifted from gossip about a crime to deeper questions about responsibility, intervention, and the warning signs society often overlooks. Experts weighed in too. Criminal psychologists pointed to Jessica's descent into isolation and paranoia, classic hallmarks of someone under psychological control. Financial investigators highlighted the suspicious money trail, suggesting the mansion itself might have been more than just a home, but a motive. In the end, the Liberty County case did more than just fill headlines. It forced America to confront uncomfortable truths. How well do we really know the people closest to us? How much influence can one person wield over another? And how far will greed push someone to orchestrate tragedy in pursuit of wealth? As the legal process crawls forward, one haunting question remains. Was this the act of a desperate woman, or the carefully executed plan of something, or someone, much bigger? And if that's true, how many more secrets are buried beneath the mansion walls? You've now seen every piece of the Liberty County Mansion mystery. The shocking discovery, the tangled investigation, the psychological manipulation, and the unanswered questions still haunting this case. But one truth remains. What really happened inside those walls is far from fully understood. Was Jessica Quintana truly the mastermind behind a twisted plan? Or was she a pawn, manipulated and controlled by someone who knew exactly how to use her? Did Raymond Delaney orchestrate the events from the shadows? Or is he just another player caught in the storm? I want to hear your theory. Drop a comment below and tell me what you think. Was this tragedy the work of one desperate mind? Or the result of a deeper, darker conspiracy still unfolding? I read every single one. And if you're new here, don't leave without subscribing to Crime Scene 24/7, because the next story we're investigating might be even more shocking than this one. We uncover the evidence, follow the digital trails, and reveal the truths that mainstream headlines leave behind. Because here, the truth never sleeps.